We had a wonderful talent scout here named Milton Lewis, and every night Milton would go out to a stage play and look at the actors, the actresses, make notes, and those he wanted, he would call into the studio for an audition. Milton Lewis went out to the Pasadena Community Playhouse to catch a play one night and saw all the cast, and one person stood out. This man was playing a part of an 80-year-old man, and he went backstage, and this 80-year-old man was really 19 years old, and his name was William Beadle. So Milton brought him to the studio. They tested him, came out fine. They put him under contract, and this William Beadle and I became very good friends, and one day he came over to me and said, "I'm going to buy you lunch." I said, "What's the occasion?" He said, "I got 3 lines in a picture called $1 Million Legs. I got 3 lines, isn't that great?" In the meantime, they didn't think that William Beadle was such a good name for the marquee, and they changed his name to William Holden. A few months later, Bill and I were driving down Hollywood Boulevard, and there on the marquee of this big theater, it says, Barbara Stanwyck, William Holden, and Golden Boy. We drove around the lot 6 times so we could see it, and we'd stop until the people in back had honked the horn, and we'd have to move on. We'd come back and stop and look at the marquee. And I said, "Bill, God, look at that. Barbara Stanwyck, William Holden, and Golden Boy." He said, "AC, that says William Holden. My name is William Beadle. I'm going to try to keep the 2 people apart as much as I can." And he did. He kept them apart. And from that picture, my gosh, he became one of the biggest stars in Hollywood.
He was just the most gorgeous man, and I think I was in love with him before I was in love with him. I think he was at a great high point when he made Picnic. And I was just old enough to really understand his appeal.
Well, what do you know? Joe Gillis. Hi, Artie. Where you been keeping that gorgeous face of yours? In a deep freeze.
But of course, Sunset Boulevard, that and Bridge on the River Kwai are the 2 classics that everybody always recalls when they mention Bill's name.
The name is Schaefer, Betty Schaefer. Right now, I wish I could crawl in a hole and pull it in after me.
If I could be of any help.
Bill Holden had my heart and always will have my heart. We were never lovers. We were really, really good friends. We had our own intimacy. Bill and I made 4 films. We spent a lot of time, several years, where these pictures were 12, 14, 16 weeks long. We played the lead opposite each other. We were together all day long. We went home to our separate families, but we came back the next morning and spent more waking hours with each other than we ever did with anyone else.
And may I suggest that if we're ever to finish this story, you stay at least 2 feet away from me. The first time you see me coming any closer, I want you to take off a shoe and plunk me on the head with it.
I remember once, he was coming in from London, and I was in New York City, and I heard somebody shouting at me, "Nancy!" And I turned around and I said, "Bill!" And we ran and we embraced, and a man came by and tapped us on our shoulders and said, "This is better than watching an old movie."
We met as a result of a tennis tournament at La Costa. We had a most extraordinary symbiosis, given the fact that there was quite an age difference. There was a kind of seamlessness as far as the world that we grew up in. I had an insatiable quest for knowledge and travel and adventure, and so did he. He felt more than anything else that he was an interpreter, as indeed we all are, interpreters of somebody else's work, which is the concept of the writer and the director. He felt that with collaboration, he could exercise his interpretation.
Why, you sweet kid.
There's one called Window, something with the window.
Dark Windows, how'd you like it?
Oh, I didn't.
Thank you.
He felt he was also could be more like an everyman, that people could relate to him because he represented something that was not unattainable.
Are you trying to be funny? Because I'm all out of laughs. I'm over a barrel. I need a job.
I haven't got a thing.
I was always really very interesting how in Sunset Boulevard he was able to tread that interesting line between a certain survival instinct and yet retain a kind of sense of somebody that you wanted to help out of his circumstances, which is why the Nancy Olson character, their relationship actually works, because you can see that somewhere in there she thinks there's still some hope for this character.
Come on, Joe.
Come on, where? Back to a one-room apartment I can't pay for? Back to a story that may sell and very possibly will not?
And when he completely succumbs or is seduced by the good life, he loses respect for himself. And that's such a delicate thing to play. And you see him losing respect for himself. And Bill was never afraid to do that. He quite enjoyed that challenge. And it was very daring for a leading man to take on that sort of slightly unsavory character.
I can't look at you anymore, Joe.
How about looking for the exit?
I think that he was never, ever happy being a movie star. And by the way, I can't tell you how hard it is to be a movie star. The demands, the distortions of your life, the isolation. You cannot go out and just integrate with the world in a normal way. You can't. They simply think about you differently. You are segregated, and you have to find a way to operate within that island.
My second novel was called The Blue Knight, and it was bought to be made into a 4-hour miniseries starring William Holden and Lee Remick. I can remember one day they were shooting on Skid Row. My partner and I pulled up in a detective car, and Bill Holden was out there in uniform, LAPD uniform. And a woman walked up to him. He was just standing on the corner having a cigarette. And a woman walked up to him and said, "Officer, can you tell me how to get to First and Los Angeles Street?" And Bill Holden said, "Yes, ma'am. If you'll just go down there 2 blocks and turn to your right and just keep going, you'll find First and Los Angeles Street." She said, "Oh, thank you very much, officer." And he said, "You're welcome, ma'am." Bill Holden was a pro, you know. He was the kind of guy that was always on time, the kind of guy that knew his lines, the kind of actor who was generous with other actors. You don't always find that. And when he was not on the set and not on location, and I had the pleasure of being with him a couple times, and a few times actually, he was Bill Holden then. He wasn't a Norma Desmond-like actor, you know, who was obsessed. He wasn't obsessed at all. So you could be perfectly relaxed with a guy like that, no matter how big a star he was.
Oh, he was never nostalgic about films. The one film that he would talk about, his favorite film, was The Bridges of Toko-Ri. It had been his second time working with Frederick March, and he loved and admired him.
Militarily, this war's a tragedy.
I think we ought to pull out.
Now, that's rubbish, son. You know it.
Every younger actor of his day realized the worth of this great craftsman, and never more than the way they worked together in Bridges of Toko-Ri.
Son, whatever progress this world has made has always been because of the efforts and the sacrifices of a few.
I think it's extremely poignant because it doesn't have a happy ending, because it is the story of the sacrifices that are made on behalf of patriotism. It was something that touched Bill tremendously.
Bill never changed. One thing that stardom did for him, he always liked to travel. He traveled all over the world when he had a chance, and he was very interested in the animals in Africa, and he went over and started a safari club there, which became very, very famous.
Bill had another life, and his other life in Africa was actually something that, in many ways, I used to think that he was prouder of the work that he had done in wildlife conservation, and that he had begun in wildlife conservation way before the term was even in popular use. I think at the end of the day that if you would have asked him about his accomplishments, I think that was something that he thought had been worthwhile.
Well, I would say this, Mike, that I think what this country needs is a greater understanding of the peoples of the world. I've been fortunate enough to work in films in the past few years that have involved the problems of different races of the world, and I, as a producer, am now searching for something that will bring about a better understanding, an exchange of ideas, and a way of life. I think that in a small way, a picture like Bridges of Tokyo-Ri contributed to that. Love is a Many Splendid Thing, again dealt with a problem which was might be termed a universal one. I plan to travel in the near future, hoping to find another story that will perhaps tell the problems of people so that we, through the great medium of motion pictures here in the United States, can understand a little better.